War. War never changes. Imagine war on a scale we have never known, but also war we have seen time and time again. A war for control, a war of fear and hatred, a war we have always avoided but always knew could happen. Absolute nuclear war. Not between the US and Russia. No, in the imagined waste world of the Fallout series, war happens between the United States and China, not over politics, but over resources. The ensuing bombardment has crippled the world in Fallout, forcing humanity to either be lucky enough to be in nuclear vaults, or brave the irradiated wasteland the bombs brought forth. The Fallout games explore the struggles of survivors in these various wastelands. The settings range from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. to Las Vegas to Boston. They are all role-playing games where the player controls a survivor of the nuclear war, or at least they have survived the wasteland. Gameplay is dictated by a rule set called GURPS. Similar to D20 from Dungeons & Dragons, GURPS split up attributes into the following. Strength dictates carrying capacity and melee damage. Perception controls how able a character is at when it comes to seeing things and aiming. Endurance describes how tough a character is. Charisma informs how able a character is at conversing and affects their relationships with others. Intelligence is how smart a character is. Agility specifies how often characters can attack in a row, plus how stealthy they are, and luck regulates random chance occurrences, such as critical hits and special encounters. An anagram for these stats is special. Other secondary attributes exist. Skills are values that show how good a character is at doing or using something, such as small guns, first aid, or bartering. Traits are descriptors of characters that usually cannot be changed and are born with, such as being naturally resistant to radiation, or being thinner than normal and as such quicker but weaker. Perks are something along the lines of massive leaps in ability and drastically change gameplay. Some perks enhance combat, others make using certain weapons more effective, and there's even one that gives another level when selected. Traits are chosen at the beginning of the game, skills are initially based off of special skills, and sometimes are enhanced or decreased during character creation. During a level up, players are often given skill points to be distributed between the available choices. Once every few levels, players get to pick a feat. Keep in mind that Fallout 4 changed a lot about the secondary traits, and even how the special stats are changed in general. Instead of skills or traits, there are only feats, chosen from a grid, but I'll go over that later. Fallout is one of the most revered CRPG franchises ever, alongside Ultima, Heroes of Might and Magic, and Elder Scrolls. Heck, from Fallout 3 onwards, the games have either been made by or published by Bethesda, the makers of Elder Scrolls. So now it's time to find out how good the entire series is and how each game holds up. Before I get to the reviews of each of the games separately, I'm going to go ahead and point out that this is video 1 of several. The first video is going to have the reviews of Fallout 1, 2, and 3. The second video is going to have the reviews of Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 4. The video is going to be too long otherwise. Sorry. Released in 1997 for PC, the first Fallout game introduces players to the California wasteland around Los Angeles, circa 2170. The region is desolate save for a few towns and military bases, plus a few other oddities. Players take control of the Vault Dweller, a created character who is an inhabitant of Vault 13. The Vault Tech vaults were large, well-stocked, subterranean nuclear shelters that could house large numbers of peoples. Vault Tech isn't exactly what it seems though, but we'll explore that later in the series, more than we do here. Vault 13 is starting to run out of water. The program component that allows the gathering of water, the water drip, has broken and needs to be replaced. The Vault Dweller is chosen to leave the protection of the vault to go fetch a spare from a nearby vault. The Vault Dweller's journey has them going all over the California wastes. it is possible to encounter bands of raiders, groups of mutant rats, even parties of ghouls. Ghouls are people who were mutated from the leftover radiation. They aren't the only mutants, however. That said, some ghouls are nice and sentient, some are bad and sentient, some are feral and have no sentience whatsoever. Once a player retrieves a water drip and returns it, the Overseer of Vault 13 goes over all the info gathered and finds out that something is disturbing. There has to be an army of super mutants out in the wastes, and they cannot be unaware of the Vault Dweller anymore. They will hunt down the Vault and destroy it, based on all the information at hand. The Vault Dweller is tasked with not only ending the creation of super mutants, but also ending the threat the current mutants currently pose. This task has the Dweller going to a well-armed military base and another vault, covered in the mutant flesh of the super mutant leader known as the Master. The Master is controlling something called the Forced Evolution Virus, which, when injected into a thing, a living being of any sort, mutates them or kills them. In the case of most humans, it either really screws them up, or they get turned into hulking beasts I have been referring to, the super mutants. How the player accomplishes the tasks laid out before them is truly up to them. The true greatness of Fallout is freedom. Players are free to create the character they want to play as, and further customizations open up as gameplay continues. Players can be pacifist negotiators, gun-blazing cowboys, vicious martial artists, or sneaky assassins. While much of the game's problems can be solved with violence, sometimes that truly is the hardest way to go about fulfilling quests. This actually happened to me. As I blazed a bulleted path through the wastes, I could not finish the very last fight. I had to resort to talking to win. Choice truly is the name of the game here. Players get to choose how much to do or when. Even the main quest of getting the water chip can be ignored if the player knows what to do and when. If there is any criticism to level at this game, it is that the player runs the risk of running into situations where they are vastly unprepared. This, however, is part of the charm of the game. It is all about trial and error. The randomness of the game is both the worst and the most fun thing about it. One of the hardest fights in the game for me was made a lot easier because I got lucky and the main enemy didn't even engage while his flunkies did. Every day I was playing this game, all I wanted to do was keep playing. I love this game. 5 out of 5. It may be one of my favorite RPGs, and I'm not even a huge fan of classic style computer RPGs. I've always found them a wee bit overbearing and hard to get into. Baldur's Gate? More like Boredom's Gate. Give me that Fallout instead, please. Released in 1998 for PCs, Fallout 2 is a direct follow-up to the first game, both in terms of style and story. Taking place a few generations after the Vault Dweller's adventures, players assume the role of the great-grandchild of that Dweller. Once again, the character titled the Chosen One can be chosen from presets or customized. The one is chosen by their mother, the granddaughter of the Vault Dweller and leader of their tribe, to fetch a Garden of Eden creation kit. This GECK, as it's called, allows for the creation of an area of verdant health within the nuclear wasteland. Their village, Arroyo, or however it's pronounced, is dying out, and in order to survive, they need the GECK. The Chosen One wanders an area of California just north of the area the Vault Dweller discovered. Vault 13, Vault 15, and the Mariposa military base are actually along the southern edge of this game's map, so there is some overlap. There is even a returning character. Tandy, the teenage daughter of the mayor of Shady Sands, who may or may not have been rescued by the Vault Dweller, is the leader of the New California Republic, which sprung up in place of that town. Just like their great-grandparent, the Chosen One goes forth from simple beginnings and visits many different locales and people, collecting many different items, weapons, and armor, as well as completing many different quests. Or rather, they may do all those things. Just like the first game, doing any of these is a choice to be made. Only the critical quest of retrieving the GECK and the resulting quest afterwards are absolutely necessary. The major enemy presence this time is the Enclave instead of super mutants, who are still there, just not the big baddies. The Enclave is the remnant of the pre-war American government, led by the President of the United States. The government obviously knew the war was coming, so they hid away miles off the San Francisco coast on an oil rig. After a few hundred years, they came up with a plan to start fresh with the country. The only problem is, oh, those darn humans. See, they consider any human exposed to the nuclear fallout from the war to be mutants, no matter how healthy. Even vault dwellers. So they come up with a plan to use the forced evolutionary virus as a weaponized plague. They're not really inconspicuous though. The Brotherhood of Steel, and at least one other group in San Francisco, is keenly aware of the advanced technology that the Enclave possesses. On top of that, they start raiding local settlements for test subjects. One such settlement is Aurora. The Chosen One returns with a Gek, only to find rubble and a dying spirit doctor, who reveals that the citizens were all taken to the oil rig. Off to the rig the one goes, to meet the president and fight the final boss, named Frank. Yes, Frank. I had quite a lot of fun with Fallout 2. The ability to break the game to your whims so easily is clearly indicative of the ability for players to choose their route through the game if they are willing to roll the dice, and by that I mean save and load a lot. In the same vein, I screwed myself out of being able to get a car and thus traveling faster because I had the nuclear reactor at a town called Gecko melt down. This is the consequence of being able to freely choose what to do and when, and such consequences were not as noticeable in the first game. Having a game based on free choices is pointless without consequences, so this is welcome. I will say that I never really got into having companions. I know that companions are much better in this game than in the first, where they were just kind of meat shields, since you can arm and armor them better and have more control over their actions, but in the 3 times I used them, they felt like hindrances more than help. That was more to do with how I play these kinds of games than it does with the game itself. All in all, I gave this game a 5 out of 5. This feels like the game the first Fallout could have been, and considering how much I liked the first game, that's pretty awesome. If I could give the first game a 4.75, I would, because that's just how good the second game is by comparison. Both are amazing though. Leading up to 2003, Black Isle was working on a third mainline Fallout game. Fallout Tactics doesn't count. Now known as Van Buren, it was cancelled because of financial problems. The following year, Bethesda bought the rights to the series from publisher Interplay and created a game from scratch, using the same engine they used for Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. Released in 2008, instead of taking place in the Mojave like Van Buren did, which we will get back to I promise, it took place in the wasteland around Washington, D.C. The Capital Wastes introduced a new play style to the series. Instead of being an isometric overhead turn-based RPG, the gameplay was first-person or over-the-shoulder third-person, and was much more action-oriented, again, much more like Elder Scrolls. Basic lore was the same, but this was just a new setting and a new time. The player assumes the role of the Lone Wanderer, a vault dweller who goes forth from their vault after their dad causes a ruckus and leaves. Instead of a generic character creation screen, assigning sex and gender is done at childbirth, with skill preferences set later as means of a childhood proficiency exam. Hunting after father, the Wanderer travels across the Capital Wastelands, helping or destroying or ignoring people along the way. Choices are made obvious even within the tutorial section that takes place in the vault. Conversation choices have consequences that last further into the game. The first place most people will go after leaving the vault is the nearest town, Megaton. Megaton sits in the impact crater around an unexploded, but still armed, nuclear bomb. This presents one of the first major decisions of the game. Do you attempt to disarm the bomb, set it to explode to the pleasure of a nearby real estate mogul, or do you leave it be? If you leave it be, you do so knowing it could explode at any time. Keep in mind, there are people who worship this bomb. If you fiddle with it, you could anger them. If you have it explode, you will meet the survivors, who become ghouls, due to the radiation. This is the kind of choice structure the game presents to you. I investigated the family of one of the residents of Megaton and found out they were being terrorized by... they're vampires. Or they're cannibals that narrow their cravings down to just blood. You could be the vigilant hero and wipe them out, you could side with them and be the edgiest Hot Topic shopper ever, or you could just do what I did and negotiate a treaty between the Goths and the people they were terrorizing. All are valid choices. This happens all the way through the game, and it's Well, that's awesome. It even goes into the companions, of which I used 2. A Brotherhood Paladin whose name I can't remember, who died both accidentally because of a known glitch, and in battle. And a super mutant named Fox. Fox actually has a critical, if brief, part to play in the main storyline. At one point, the player is tasked with getting a Gek from the vault in order to finish their father's life work, creating a source of safe water for the capital wasteland. Fox is in that vault. After getting the Gek and trying to leave the Enclave, captures them. After escaping them, and oh boy the choices available during that, Fox arrives with heavy weaponry to support your escape. It's awesome, and so is Fox. After joining sides conclusively with the Brotherhood of Steel, a giant robot called Liberty Prime, designed in the past to destroy communists, is tasked with assailing the facility where the Clean Water Project is. Destroying the Enclave forces, Project Purity is put into place, and wastes get free clean water. However, the player has to sacrifice themselves, or someone else has to do it. Or not. The player may choose to side with the Enclave and add a variation of the FEV into the water, which would kill all mutants and tons of humans, or they could choose to let the thing explode. All choices. This is Fallout after all. It's also Bethesda, so you know there was DLC for it. All released in 2009. No horse armor though. Released first was Operation Anchorage. The Wanderer happens upon a radio frequency asking for help from anyone with a Pip-Boy. As one of the sole owners of one in the Wastes, the Wanderer answers the call. Brotherhood outcasts have found an old world military base, but it can only be opened after running through a VR training program. Said program can only be ran by a Pip-Boy wielder. The Lone Wanderer complies. The program itself depicts the liberation of Anchorage, a military operation to free Anchorage, Alaska from the operations of Chinese forces in the Sino-American Resource Wars. It's a fairly straightforward set of quests, with a fair bit of customization through, as players get to create a small task force to go about missions with. After finishing the simulation, the Wanderer has access to the armory, and as such one of the best armors in the game. A mutiny within the outcasts happens and a fight ensues. I had no idea what was going on when this happened. Straightforward and not unfun, Operation Anchorage is one of the rare times where pre-war lore is shown instead of talked about in the series. Released next was The Pit. Heading to the northwest corner of the Wastes, the Wanderer encounters a man who needs someone to help his enslaved friends and family. After a bit of traveling, the Wanderer poses as a slave and is willingly captured in order to help from within. The Pit is Pittsburgh, turned into a slum by a slaver known as Asher. Okay, the war made Pittsburgh a slum. Asher turned it into a slave den. Asher is actually a former Brotherhood of Steel paladin from Chicago and once tried to conquer Pittsburgh. After mostly losing that fight, Asher recognized the potential of controlling a steel mill and produced his own equipment. He started a gang and had slaves run the mill and gather materials. Turns out the slaves were starting to get sick and mutate, which is one of the reasons a slave escaped and got help. The Wanderer eventually finds out that Asher had a plan to stop the sickness. His own infant child has built-in immunity, so he was going to have his kid's blood studied to hopefully create a cure. He may be a slaver, but he's a smart guy. He knows corpses can't work. This presents the major choice that the Wanderer must make. If the slaves take over the pit, they will effectively kill the child in order to develop a cure. If the slavers are allowed to control, well, they're slavers. Knowing this, making the choice isn't easy. Most of the lead up to this revelation of the child being the cure is that Asher is the bad guy. Flipping the morality back on the slaves is a clever plot twist. The pit is okay beyond that twist. It does introduce one of the coolest weapons ever in the auto axe. It's basically a handheld excavator, but instead of rocks, it can be used to excavate organs. It's awesome. Next up was Broken Steel. Broken Steel is interesting because it actually introduces a possible change in the basic game ending and adds content after that. Turns out there are two companions who can survive turning on Project Purity. The aforementioned Fox and a ghoul companion I never met during my playthrough. Both are immune to radiation. After passing out from the seeing the light, it's unclear. After waking up in the Brotherhood base, the Wanderer is told that the Enclave is on the retreat and needs to be finished off. Attempting to assault one of the last bases almost fails when Liberty Prime is destroyed with a goddamn orbital bombardment. Where the hell did the Enclave have Okay, they probably always did. Whoops. Anyway, the Wanderer is then tasked with finding a Tesla coil from a local power station, then raiding the rest of the Enclave at their last main camp at an Air Force base. Funny story, the Enclave is destroyed with the same orbital bombardment that destroyed Liberty Prime. Where the Brotherhood Citadel can be bombed and destroyed. It's your choice. Broken Steel is perhaps the most combat-oriented of the 5 DLC packs. It's cool that it adds on to the established story of the game. There are side quests that have to do with the Clean Water Project, but I did not do those. In this way, this is the only DLC that actually feels like it adds on to the game instead of just being a thing that happens off to the side. Point Lookout was released at the same time as Broken Steel. The Wanderer meets a desperate mother at a boat along the river. Her daughter has gone to Point Lookout and hasn't come back. You board the boat and arrive at the southernmost tip of Maryland, a marsh that never really got touched by the nukes. That doesn't mean everything is hunky-dory though. There was a massive conflict as well as an undertone of espionage. The conflict witnessed happens between a ghoul named Desmond, who has taken up residence in the manor on the island, and a tribe of locals who want him out of that manor. Following the quests, the Wanderer initially helps out Desmond, then joins the tribes, or pretends to, which is done under the instruction of Desmond. The daughter is in the tribe, hurrah! Eventually it is discovered that the tribe is being led by the disembodied consciousness of Professor Calvert, the original owner of the manor, who Desmond swindled in the past. The Wanderer then gets to choose between siding with Desmond and siding with Calvert, or neither, or kill both. Choices! Honestly, I did not really enjoy Point Lookout. The marsh is somewhat less desirable as a location than the wasteland is. Several cool ideas exist here, such as the Chinese spy quest and the drug sequence, but overall I feel like Point Lookout can be completely overlooked. The last DLC was Mothership Zeta, and whoa, what a doozy this one is. Responding to an alien distress call, the Wanderer is then abducted by actual space aliens. After meeting 2 other abductees and staging a prison escape, a group of abductees who are cryogenically frozen are found. The group now consists of the Wanderer, a slaver named Soma, a little girl who was abducted just before the start of the Great War named Sally, a cowboy named Paulson, a pre-war medic named Elliot, and a samurai named Toshiro. Sally knows the most, having been free in the ship the longest. She coordinates everyone except Toshiro, who just kinda does what he wants, to go to specific parts of the ship to help disable it, all for their goal to achieve a teleporter down to the planet's surface. This all leads to a space battle with another portion of the spaceship that disconnects and attacks. Mothership Zeta is fun, if only for being drastically different. The gameplay takes place on an alien spaceship for Christ's sake, and you actually fight aliens. How much more different could that be? Powerful ninja weapons can be found here, also they're extremely valuable. As well as having access to several well-written characters all at the same time, makes this one of the most fun DLCs to play through. That said, I do feel like it was a little long in the tooth. Each DLC takes about the same amount of time to finish through, so this one seems not well paced. Not as bad as Point Lookout, but the fun starts dwindling a bit after a while. Fallout 3 is a fun departure from the original games. It's controversial, but honestly this kind of game is actively more fun. It is less of a role-playing game, that is true. It is more action than Fallout 1 and 2, but that makes actually sitting down and playing a portion of it not a matter of managing numbers, but a matter of managing real-time gameplay. When it comes to just sitting down and playing a video game, this is what I personally prefer. I like the first 2 Fallout games, but this is more my thing. The ability to choose outcomes is still there in spades, and hell, the game even calls out your choices with the main radio station being run by a DJ who is actively affiliated with the Brotherhood. As such, things you do that are positive to them are praised, but any evil act are depicted as such. It makes choices more tangible as you directly have them addressed to you. Of course, listening to the radio is optional, so maybe you'd never hear it. It's just another choice. 4 out of 5. Fallout 3 gets a bum rap. It's stuck between the originals and a game people consider to be much better. Unfortunately, I feel like it eventually becomes an active go here, do this, over and over, and I never got this feeling from the original games. It is well worth playing, just ignore Point Lookout. It expands the lore in significant ways, such as properly introducing the vaults that actively experimented on people instead of sheltering them. It also did not take place in the Southwest, which helps explain how the rest of the country was affected by the war. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Tomorrow we'll go ahead and get to the reviews for Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 4. Like, share, subscribe, please. Also do please consider donating, joining the Discord, and check out my Facebook. Again, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.